Back for the final touches to this gumbo. As I stated earlier, I put my chicken and sausage in the oven so that it would cook to get some of the oil out, as well as to make sure that the skin on the chicken wasn't all soft and everything. So I'm going to take that out of the oven, and we're going to add it to the gumbo.
Can I taste one of those sausages?
Yes, you can taste one of the sausages. I'll let you get one from the bottom. I baked that for on 400, maybe for like about 30-40 minutes or so. You want the sausage? Your hands are clean?
Yeah.
And it's just until
They're hard.
they're not hard. To get some of the oil out. And then we're going to add it.
Oh, they'll soften up once they get in that water anyway.
Make sure that you use a spoon with holes in it so that you can drain the oil. Other than that, it'll kind of defeat the purpose. And like I said, just use sausage that you prefer. This is two different types. One's the andouille sausage. That I use 2 packs, just like the regular size. And then the double D sausage, I bought the large pack, and I used about half of it. But you just use it to your own preference. How much gumbo you're making, how much meat you want in there. Some people use deer sausage. If you like that type of game or whatnot, you can use it. It's just your own preference. And a lot of times that deer sausage is mixed with pork or something, so it doesn't taste so gamey.
This may be like a 4-part video. This is the 3rd part so far, I think. 4 or 5-part video.
So by doing that, all that oil and all that stuff is not going to be in the pot. Another thing you can do is kind of, if you really want to cut back on some of the fat, look at the fat content in the sausage. Or if you use, this sausage is mixed with, it's beef and pork, but if usually, I find that if you use the beef sausage, it tends to be leaner. It also tends to be a little drier, I find, but it's just to your preference on what kind you want to use. If you're really super health conscious, you can just get chicken sausage. It just depends on what you like. I think the chicken might not have as much flavor, but it'll be a little bit more health conscious. For the chicken, I did season it before I put it in the oven, just so that it would have a little flavor on it, so you can lightly season your chicken.
What kind of season did you use?
I just used some Tony Sachets on there.
As you can see, good old Tony's, which most of us from Louisiana likes to use, and even people here in Texas.
See, my assistant didn't clean it Make sure you inspect your chicken. You can buy the drumettes. Wasn't able to find them, so it had to be cut. Just make sure you inspect your chicken to make sure that all of this, the little feather things are off. Sometimes they don't clean them all that well. But you do want to make sure you get that off. And once this is added, really and truly, you're only going to let it cook maybe about 10 minutes. You don't have to let it cook long because all of the parts are actually cooked.
So you don't want to overcook your chicken.
Well, what's going to happen is it's going to start falling off the bone. Now, some people, instead of using, if you don't want to use these parts of the chicken, you can use whatever parts you want. Some people will use like chicken breasts and cut them up. I just find that it's drier than using the wing, but you can use whatever portion you want. I've seen some people actually use larger portions, like put chicken legs and all that in there. I just think that it's neater and cleaner if you just use the smaller parts of the chicken. So basically, this is what your almost finished product is going to look like. The only thing that's missing is the crab and the shrimp that I'm going to add at the very end. And like I said, that only has to be in there for maybe like 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to let that cook for a bit, and I'm going to show you, I'm going to steal this sausage again.
Shrimp.
Now,
And crabs.
this is about 1.5 pounds of medium shrimp. I bought the one that was already peeled. I got this from Fiesta. Just make sure that you check where you buy it from, inspect it. I usually buy the peeled ones, and they've already been deveined. Just inspect to make sure that they've been deveined properly, which they did a good job. They don't always do so. If that's the case, then you have to clean them. But they did a really good job. And I always get these medium size. I don't like having huge shrimp in the gumbo. It's just there for flavor, and it's a little bit of everything. So you don't want to have big huge jumbo shrimp in there because it kind of takes away from everything else. So medium size is usually pretty good, and they're usually reasonably priced. The larger ones are usually more expensive. Now, as far as your crabs, I always use blue shell crabs just because I'm from Louisiana. That's what I'm used to. You can use the snow crabs and all of that stuff, but I would think that it would be cumbersome with those big legs being in the pot. But I've seen people use them. When I lived in Dallas and couldn't get the blue shell crabs, I just used crab meat. So you can just use whatever you want to make sure that you have the flavor. As long as you have the flavor, that's the most important part. Usually, these crabs, you don't have to buy them live. They're usually in the store already clean for the most part. You just kind of have to break them in half, kind of clean that little middle part out. But they're usually there in the frozen section. So, and again, this is just for flavoring, because really and truly, I don't eat the crab so much in the gumbo, but it's just there for the flavor. This is about, I guess this is about maybe 10 or so whole crabs. You don't need a lot, because I just find a lot of people don't eat it anyway, so you're left with a bunch of crabs. So This is about 10 and this is about a pound and a half of shrimp. You can do more, just make sure that you get the right size. You don't want them to be too big, and you don't want them to be too small either, you know, unless you're gonna buy a whole bunch. So I'm gonna add that shortly. I'm just basically waiting for this to get to a boil, which it has. And at this point, if you want to add any more seasoning, you can. Just be mindful not to add too much salt, because after this sits, usually gumbo is better the next day, I find. But the more it sits, the flavors are going to sit in, and you just don't want it to get too salty. So just make sure that you don't add too much. And I don't want this to cook for too long, so I'm going to go ahead and add the shrimp and crabs. I'm gonna mix that in really well. And if you'll see, the ones that I've added is starting to cook. It doesn't take shrimp at all a long time to cook. And if you'll see, once it sits, there's a little bit of oil that's sitting at the top. You can spoon that out once your gumbo is finished and it settles. But there's not a lot in there, as opposed to had I not put that in the oven. So I'm just going to go ahead and add the crabs. And you really don't need this much crabs. I had some in the freezer already, which wasn't enough. And then another pack that I bought, and I just want to use it all and not have to put it back in the freezer. But I don't know, I may need to. And sometimes if you have too much, you can always make a stew. You can stew the shrimp and crabs. Almost the same thing as the gumbo. It's just that you're not going to put all the sausage and all of that stuff in there. Almost like you're just making a brown gravy and adding the shrimp and the crabs, and it tastes good. So I'm going to add the rest of these just so that, for the sake of getting rid of them, really.
It's good for flavoring.
And so I'm going to mix this up and let it cook some. And when I say some, I just mean maybe like 10 minutes at the most. It doesn't take a long time at all. Where I grew up, and everybody's different, every place is different. We eat potato salad with our gumbo on the side. I did not make any. I mean, it's pretty much straightforward how to make potato salad, but we will put that on the side, and you just serve this over some hot white rice. Some people will, and I don't think it's really a Louisiana thing. Some people will eat it as crackers, because like I said, it's technically a soup. And it's up to you what you want to use. But definitely need some rice, and the potato salad would be nice. So I'm going to get a bowl together with some rice in there, just so that you can see what the finished product looks like. I have no idea what that was. I'm going to get another spoon. Excuse me, sir. And then that's pretty much it. I don't think it's complicated. It is tedious and time consuming really as far as preparing, cutting up all the seasoning and that sort of a deal. But you just basically throwing it in there and letting it mesh together. Now, one thing to make sure you want to consider once the gumbo is done. This is a electric stove. Make sure you put it on another eye so that it can cool down. You want to let it cool down on the stove or on the counter first. And then after it's kind of just a little warm, I usually do like a ice water bath to bring the temperature down. You don't want to stick it in the refrigerator right away because just that change in the temperature like that, it usually spoils. So just make sure that once you finish with it, you let it sit there and cool on the stove, but on another eye so that it'll cool a little quicker. And make sure that you put like a ice water bath in the sink, just some ice and water so that it will cool down. Let me see, the crabs are nice and red now.
Yeah, they went from blue to red.
So it doesn't take long for them to cook.
How about those shrimp?
They're nice and pink now. Let's see if I can find one. There's one that's there. So it doesn't take long for it to cook, and actually because this is a electric stove and it's still going to stay hot for a while. For the last 5 or 10 minutes, you really can just turn it off and the heat will still be cooking it. But just for the sake of time, I'm gonna turn it off, and I'm just gonna spoon or ladle this in. Once I find it. And then we'll be done.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is how you make Louisiana gumbo from scratch.
I guess there is some in the box that you can. I've just never, you know, when you always make something yourself. But I guess you can use whatever's out there to make it easier for you. But really and truly, it just comes down to taking the time to cut up everything and season it and all of this other stuff. So, but do what works best for you to make it easy and simple. You don't want to think of it as a chore. And this is the finished product. You have some Louisiana okra gumbo with a little bit of everything in there.
That looks delicious. That must be my bowl.
No, my dear, I need to taste it myself to make sure that I'm satisfied with it before I give it away to anyone else.
Okay. Well,
thanks for your time, guys. I know it takes a while. I don't know how Keith is going to break this up or put it together. I don't know. But I'm just the cook, so hopefully you will have success with your gumbo.
awesome.